Hello and welcome everyone, except my sister who's upstairs having a tarot reading. And thank you so much for being here today. I mean, we are here in Watkins Bookstore. This is London's oldest esoteric bookstore. It was opened in 1893. So we are actually absorbing a moment of history. So let it just ooze into every fibre of your being while we sit here this evening. Because just doing my research before I welcomed you all this evening, apparently Yeats actually used to gather here to bring together that focus and attention on esoteric philosophies. It's so exciting. So Yeats used to stand here, and Watkins actually published some of Carl Jung's philosophical papers. So we really are just standing in the footsteps of giants, and I feel very, very humbled to be here and very grateful that you've all taken the time out on this balmy summer's day to come down into the basement of Watkins and just talk about Big Impact Without Burnout. And I am honoured to be part of the Watkins family and to have been published by Watkins. Thanks very much. I feel excited by the fact that I'm part of such a wonderful historic vibe, really, in terms of publishers and shop, and some of the spiritual authors that Watkins published today, like Teal Swan, are goddesses that I follow, and it's just an honour to be part of that ilk. And as we gather here today in this lovely, cosy moment, I'm very, very grateful to be part of a moment of crescendoing what has been 6 months since I birthed this book out into the world and gave it its wings. And my lovely daughter and I have done a US tour, a UK tour, and right now is a really special crescendo moment, coming home into the Watkins heart. Bless you. Thank you. The book itself is rippling out into the world at a pace that I didn't anticipate, and it feels as though it's grown wings. And the soul of this book, the essence of the book, is all around the fact that when we go within and we lay down our foundational imperatives and stabilize who we are, we can then go out and effect the outer, achieve our dreams, achieve our ambitions without falling over. And the fact that the book seems to be just journeying out into the world all by itself is inspiring, it's humbling, but it's so exciting, because I firmly believe in the intention of this book, which is that we can achieve success with grace. And I hope that this evening, the conversation that we're going to be having really starts to illuminate how it is possible to achieve success with grace, and how to be out in the world achieving our dreams without compromise and without conforming to the societal normalization of this hustle culture of more, do, be, where we keep breaking ourselves in this odd freneticism that actually is not sustainable. And we need to learn to come within, to be present, to be still. Because when we do that, we're actually unleashing our own magic and our own potentiality. And that's why I'm excited that people are responding to these strategies. And one of the things that I learned along my journey, and we're going to be talking a lot about our own personal experiences, as I tried to achieve and succeed, I kept slamming into burnouts again and again and again. And it was only when I understood that it's holistic, integrative self-management that we can get to a place where we truly soar and thrive, addressing ourselves physically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually. Only then can we truly soar. And that's what I hope that we're going to really be sprinkling out this evening. I want this evening to really emphasize the magic that's in the book, in these pages, and for us all to soak up a little bit of magic this evening. So I am beyond thrilled to be joined this evening by an absolutely remarkable woman who I feel proud to call a friend already. We feel such a kinship. Now, Melinda embodies resilience, reinvention, and soulful wisdom. And many of you will know Melinda as one of the UK's most loved TV presenters, but she is so much more than that. She is also a psychotherapist, a dream expert, and a woman of great depth and heart. So please join me in welcoming the amazing Melinda Messenger.
Oh, thank you.
It is such a joy to have you here with me tonight. And I can't wait to learn from your journey and your expertise. And for all of us tonight, my wish is that I have a firm belief that you can all be the stars of your own stories. In fact, it's even on my compliment slips here. So I hope that as we talk and we dive into each other's real life experiences, that we inspire some pragmatic optimism around how each and every one of us can architect our lives to thrive. So we're going to be sharing conversations, we're going to be chatting, we've got some key topics that we're going to explore, and we really want to invite you to be thinking of questions and how these particular themes apply to you and your own lives. I mean, this is a cozy space, so it invites intimacy. So we really welcome questions. We're going to have time at the end to allow us to properly continue the conversation. So it's all encompassing and everybody can join in. So shall I sit down while we chat? Because we don't want to stand up for an hour, do we? So if I sit down, is this still okay? Can everybody hear?
Just sort of angle that way, and then we can see both sides, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. We're enjoying the stage, this unusual stage. So, Melinda, I'm so happy that you're here, and you do have such an interesting background, and what a career pivot. So many of us will know you from the TV personality work, but actually that's a tiny smidgen of where you apply your focus today. Can you tell us about your journey?
Okay, yes. So I guess, yeah, so television and my, well, in my early days it was the modelling work, and then went into television. And this was back in 1997. And I guess that's probably where most people would know me from various different shows like Fort Boyard or Cowboy Builders. But in 2010, so 15 years ago, I had 3 small children. You know, I was really lucky to be doing lots of kind of work TV programs that I really loved and enjoyed, but I was utterly exhausted and just kind of really getting to the point where I would literally do one series back to back, and my kind of average day would sort of be, you know, up at 6 a.m, maybe get home by sort of 10:30, 11 if I'm not overnighting and travelling for the next location, you know, and that would be sort of 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. So it was pretty intense, and I guess I sort of had a bit of a watershed moment where I realised that I just couldn't carry on doing this. And, you know, it's one of those things, it's a bit like you get on the hamster wheel, you get a bit trapped by your own, you know, success, for want of a better word. You know, for me it was like, okay, well, I need to earn an income, I've got to provide for my family. And also, you know, it was, the work was, I did love the work. So but inside I just felt awful. I was really struggling. And at that point in time, I kind of went through a bit of a shift. I kind of had a bit of a sort of a waking up and realising, if I carry on like this, I mean, literally the thought was, this is going to kill me. You know, I just can't do it. I cannot do it all. And so, yeah, I had quite a pivotal dream at that time, which kind of, you know, looking back now, it's like, oh yeah, that was all absolutely what was meant to happen. And then, you know, what usually happens at this stage, this kind of, you know, what I would call a life crisis, is everything fell apart. So literally my marriage ended. I had a kind of a complete financial collapse for all sorts of reasons and lost everything that I'd earned. And I internally kind of had a total collapse, you know, sort of really severe depression to the point of like,
wow,
this is hard work. But the upside of that is that then led me into what I do now. So then I started a training as a transpersonal integrative psychotherapist, and then went on to do a master's in the same subject, and then went on to do some advanced training in working with dreams, because it's a really wonderful way of kind of contacting the parts of us we don't necessarily know about.
Wow, thank you so much. It is, well, it is a lot, and it's so interesting how you talk about hitting that rock bottom, which so often becomes that pivotal moment for growth. In my own experience, I think mine wasn't such a neat story as yours. Mine was repeated burnouts, but like you said, it was about, I was enjoying the success, wanted to take on more and more. And I often think about this. When we go to school, we are expected to leave school, go out into the world, and suddenly life starts expanding. And suddenly we become homeowners. Suddenly we've got to navigate potentially mortgages or rent or whatever it might be. It's DIY. It's expanding. Then it's relationships, potentially marriage, potentially parenting, constantly learning, accelerating in our careers, more and more responsibility. And I was very excited by that. Life kept on accelerating and expanding. And I wanted that. I was very intentional, very proud that I was achieving my goals. But of course I couldn't sustain, because I was subscribing to the myth that having it all meant doing it all. And so I was just literally burning myself out. And you talk about the subconscious. I only on reflection now, I realise I had unconscious beliefs that were really inhibiting my ability to protect myself first and foremost. So I was excited by business growth, by all the different dynamic fizziness of life. But I had a belief that if I had childcare, I would be failing as a mother. And I really battled with that. So I thought it was normal to sort of be mummy all day, juggle all the kids, then put them to bed, and then start running my first business. I launched my first business in 2004, and I thought that was normal. And unsurprisingly, I ended up eventually hospitalised with total immune collapse because I could no longer sustain. So my journey was then realising, well, I didn't want to shrink my dreams. I wanted to keep achieving and succeeding, but I needed to work out how. And so it was less of one big sort of calamitous moment of change. But for me, the turning point was the emotional dynamic. So perhaps that's when I actually brought in my own crises, like my marriage ending after 26 years, leaving different corporate cultures. But that was, for me, a gradual process, really. But once I realised physical, mental and emotional, that was the turning point for me. Absolutely unlocked. Then, okay, pay attention to emotional niggles. Pay attention to those triggers that become activated and create some sort of response. Perhaps it's a stress response that you're very aware of, but perhaps there's something that leaves you feeling uncomfortable, and there's a soft, simmering emotional disquiet that's just beneath the surface. And that's what I work with my clients today to pay attention to, and I'm sure you do the same, because when you actually lift up the bonnet of why am I triggered, why am I feeling this upset, and when you start making courageous decisions to change stuff, that's when you become unlimited.
And that's when you can change, isn't it, once you identify those. And you know, tell us about your book, Bianca, because obviously this is why we're here.
Bless
you know, and what was that moment for you that really kind of shifted and enabled you to kind of get this work out, put this together and release it?
It was definitely for me, as I was doing more and more self work and self exploration. I believe for each and every one of us, when you pay attention to what people ask you for advice on the most, there is gold there, because that's probably your sweet spot. I can see nodding heads. And for me, everyone kept asking me, how do you do it? How do you have 4 children and run a business and work in corporate and keep exercising and smiling and going out? How? And so that was the stimulus to then bottle it up and create a program. I call it the Energyscape program. And I wrote my first book, and very simple, the Flourish book. And I started teaching. And it started one January morning, actually. I just put an advert on nextdoor.com saying, would any local women like to come and learn how I do it? That was basically it. And that morning, and this bleak January morning, I was so nervous. About 25 women turned up. It was free, and 25 women turned up and came and sat in my lounge for about 3 hours, and I talked about how I did it. And that really was the journey that I've been on. And that was, I think, back in 2017, and now here we are. And now I hope this becomes a global movement, because oh my goodness, if ever there was a time for us to address burnout, it's now. It's just worse than ever.
Well, there does seem to be an epidemic, of burnout, really, doesn't there?
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
Well,
what's your sense?
It's this frenetic work culture that we've got into. But the interesting thing with burnout is, in 2019, it was classified by the World Health Organization as an epidemic. So it was recognized that burnout, for the first time in history, was inhibiting workplaces and workplace productivity to the tune of around $1 trillion a year. That was the estimate at the time, where there was so much lost productivity, there was absenteeism. And so it was classified as this global epidemic. The world needed to pay attention. And then COVID hit. And then it got even worse, because, of course, we then went into this snowball of frantic work harder, try and prove ourselves. And I mean, here in Europe, we slid into 11-hour working days almost immediately. And I think we all know and feel that we've really struggled to come back out of that and to put boundaries in place. So society started accidentally to really normalize this culture of just push, more, keep on going. And we've detached so far from really understanding our natural rhythms. And the reason my Energyscape method starts with energy is because the number one complaint clients in my clinic come with is, I don't have enough energy. And I know from my own experience, when we start working with our own energy and revere it and hone our way of being in tune with our natural rhythms, we can have limitless energy. But it's up to us to really learn how to self-manage. And that's where I'm trying to put this work into the heart of businesses and organizations, because I don't believe that we should shrink our dreams, and we don't have to conform to this societal norm of just break yourself to succeed. You really don't have to.
Yeah, and I think in particular, this sort of idea has really kind of been instilled in women in particular, where they do have a sense of they've got to do it all, and you're talking about having a family, doing that during the daytime, and then creating your business at night. Same for me, my 3 children, they're all adult now. But that was an immense struggle to try and kind of work the two together.
Well, and you also had fame. So you had work, children, and fame. Could you tell us what that was like?
I probably completely compartmentalised it, in all honesty, because, of course, to me, sort of fame is something that I don't necessarily experience that. It's more, so I've always felt exactly the same, but what the change was in how other people might relate to me. So that's how it would show up in my life. And sometimes that would be challenging, and other times, very rewarding. It would kind of just depend, really. But I guess being very sort of exposed and visible all of the time. And that's, I'm actually, although probably people would be surprised given, what I've done in my kind of past career, but I'm actually much more introverted than I am extroverted. So that was challenging, but I was able to kind of keep them quite separate, and I kept my children kind of quite separate from phone by particularly choosing a certain type of schooling.
Yeah.
And so just to keep things as normal and grounded and in reality, because, as we know, in the kind of world of fame, it can be quite detached from reality, and so, I worked hard at that. But I did feel a lot of pressure, and something that I had to really kind of come to understand was those sort of inner scripts that were kind of driving me. I had so many.
Okay.
From I'm sort of responsible for everybody, or I have to take care of everyone. These were really deeply embedded inner scripts, along with the lack of boundaries and the lack of self-awareness and the total lack of being conscious of my own needs. But it seems like for women that this is sort of particularly more dominant than it is for men.
It is, sadly, and the statistics, because obviously I'm studying these statistics the whole time. If we just look at the UK specifically right now, 41% of men are at risk of burning out currently, whereas it's 61% for women. So it's hitting us in a tsunami that's worse than for men. And the reason attributed to that is that 68% of the domestic labour and emotional labour at home still falls to women. So we are taking on the burden at home and at work, and we're struggling. And it all comes back to the fact that we haven't necessarily been taught how to find the empowerment of what to say no to and how to set those boundaries. And a reaction that I'm really observing at the moment is, well, actually, I don't want a promotion, thanks. Or I don't want to work at this company anymore. I'll go over there and it will feel better over there. But that isn't the answer. We've got to go within, because when we go within and find our power and find our strength and are stabilized from that foundational imperative of this keeps me solid, then we can go forth and cope with any career or any juggle. But we have to do that work. And at the moment, the numbers of people wanting to jump ship or lay blame and point fingers, there's another statistic, sorry to suddenly hit everyone with stats, but 44% of the women who left their corporate careers in COVID, because COVID created this inner moment of, right, I need to recalibrate. 44% of those women who left and then went off to pursue setting up a yoga studio or an independent e-commerce business, they've bounced back into corporate because the grass wasn't greener. And that's what I mean about this assumption that we can run away and find some peace elsewhere. It's not over there, it's within, which you must work with the whole time and teach.
Yeah, absolutely. As you've just sort of really beautifully described, wherever you go, you take yourself with you. So, whatever's happening on the kind of in your inner world, your inner state of being is going to permeate through to the rest of your life. So the turning within, finding out what's happening, but I think kind of really importantly to find out why it's happening. And for me, hearing you talk, it's you're talking about that quality of sort of finding out about who the self really is. So who are you really? What is it? What is it that drives you? What is it that you really kind of want and need? And maybe some of this is so kind of deeply buried away or disconnected from, because, and it could have been for an entire lifetime, because maybe you've never been allowed to be in contact with that. Because it does shift things, because of course the focus of women kind of caring for everybody, the families, the home, providing, that suits a lot of people, doesn't it? So you can see why that kind of conditioning is there, but of course that's not healthy for us. So turning inward and finding out about your own wants and needs and desires, whatever they might be, and then having the ability or the resources, the inner resources to follow that path and allow that path to happen, I think is the key. You know, wherever that might be it the yoga world or corporate or whatever that dream is. It kind of doesn't matter, you know, what that dream is, as long as it's your own. You're in contact with it. And then how do you go about kind of sifting out all the sort of layers of limited beliefs and ways of being that, you know, you've carried around for a lifetime. And it is entirely possible to do, and there are many different ways of working with that, you know, some of which you're working with.
Well, it's interesting, really. What you're describing there is purpose, isn't it? And I think sometimes purpose can get almost entwined in this almost ethereal, out there kind of thing. Like, we can feel devastated that we haven't found our purpose because we think it should be saving the world from child poverty, for instance. But actually, I think what you're describing is when we listen to an inner soul yearning, then actually we can find joy there because we're living on purpose. And actually, you know, I think in my own career, I can tell you a period when I was running my business. It was about 10 years old. The business was going along, and I found out I was pregnant with twins. I already had 2 lovely kids who are here this evening. And suddenly I was blessed with 4 kids under 7 and a business. And that first year of learning how to manage myself with those 4 kids was actually one of the best, happiest, most joyful, wonderful, fulfilling years of my whole life. And now, at that point, if you'd come into my house, you would have crunched over cornflakes on the carpet. My hair would have been greasy. The bed was all a bit stinky and dirty. But I was so happy because I was on purpose. And I was loving being a mum, and at that point that was all that mattered most, and I felt that joy. So now I try and inspire clients, like just exactly like you've just described, that we can find joy and purpose in whatever realm we're in. So even if we're in a corporate environment, if we find joy nurturing a team, then whatever the role is that we're doing. I've spent a decade in corporate with a hat on as a chief digital officer and a chief growth officer, chief. But actually, my real heart has been around nurturing and inspiring teams. So as long as I've shown up every day on purpose, because I've been impacting a positive dynamic that way, then I've remained energized and positive, and it's quite infectious. So it's about tuning into where do you find your joy, and that becoming your purpose. It doesn't have to be saving the world.
Absolutely. The joy can be anything, can't it? I mean, for me, I can get my joy from literally just having a really quiet morning and a cup of tea, listening to the birds. And it's pure joy. And so, you know, it doesn't necessarily, as you say, have to be big achievement. You know, it can absolutely be. Nothing is out of bounds here, but it's what brings you a sense of peace and satisfaction, what's in alignment with you. And I think really kind of what we're talking about here, aren't we? It's a lot to do with the sort of nervous system kind of response, and where the nervous system is. And if we are in that kind of agitated state to fight and flight, then we're always going to be being reactive. And actually, when we learn how to kind of work with that, then, and there's some balance that comes into that, then you can be on purpose. Then you can wake up and decide how you want your day to look, rather than sort of having to be reactive to it. But have you got any tips that you would give to help people kind of tap into that joy?
I think in this chaos, the freneticism, I get asked this so often, how to be calm in the whirlwind of modern life's assaults, because goodness me, the demands are incessant, aren't they? Everyone wants us, the kids want us, the boss wants us, the world wants us, busy. And what I teach clients is that that task list is never going to be all crossed off. That ethereal tomorrow, we all imagine tomorrow it's going to feel better because I'll have done it all. That's never coming. That task list is going to continue growing and growing, and the age of retirement is going to get later and later, and we're all going to be working longer. And what we have to do is work out how right now, in the midst of the whirlwind, how can we actually slow ourselves down and ground ourselves into the present? Because it's when we are truly present and still and connecting into our innermost selves and getting out of our head where we swirl in all the mental programs of endless thinking, when we get down into our bodies through breath. That's the sort of magic conduit, if you like. When we do that, we can stabilize ourselves. So there's a little tip that, in fact, we can all practice here now, although I hope you're all feeling calm and not stressed right now. But this is what I teach for when you are in a moment where you're feeling yourself in that hot cortisol flush of there is so much to be done, and I'm feeling myself almost reactively showing up because I'm out of
Panic.
Yeah, panic, exactly, that panic state. But yet you know you've got to go into the boardroom, or you know you've got to go on stage, or you know you've got to go and discipline your child, whatever it might be. To get yourself into a calmer state, this is a really easy little tip that takes 60 seconds. You can do it in the toilet, you can do it under the table, wherever. But I invite you to do this now, where you just rub your thumb and first two forefingers together, just rub them together whilst you take a deep breath down into your belly and inflate your belly like you're imagining a little baby on its back with its tummy arched, and imagine that you're just filling and inflating your tummy with a big, big breath. So not up in the diaphragm, but deep down into your belly. Do these deep breaths and feel the sensations of just rubbing your fingers together. Because as you do this and you're becoming aware of your body, of physical sensations, you're coming out of your head and down into your body, which soothes your nervous system. And it's a magic way of resetting that you could do very, very instantly and feel better. Do you feel better? Good.
I do.
Yeah. And what would you do? I imagine you've gone deeper with breath work and.
Well, I think what you're saying, is absolutely right. In order to kind of, so I think of the nervous system like traffic lights. So green, when we're in that space, we're kind of open, relaxed, and therefore we've got access to a wider scope. We can think more easily, be more creative. In the sort of amber zone, that's when we go into fight and flight. So we either want to run away or we want to attack. And then the red is the kind of shut down or freeze, and that's where there's just no response. And ideally, we kind of never want to get up there. So all of these techniques and the techniques that you just showed, they help kind of navigate the nervous system back down into regulation. And as you pointed out, it's working because you're drawing attention or energy or focus away from the mind. Because if it stays up in the mind keeps looping, and then that, this is going to go wrong, that's going to go wrong, and that will just spiral. So they're coming down into the body and using the breath, which is, the kind of gateway in, or sensation, which is your technique. And there are other, so there's other things that we can do that are quite quick to bring about that sort of regulated state. And that's just under the two collarbones, there's two dips. They're known as the K2-7 points. And if you cross, you can either cross your hands or just do it this way. Either way is fine. And then if you just massage into those two dips under the collarbone, and so just as we're doing it now, just really focus on the sensation. So if you just focus on the sensation of the fingers, just gently massaging against the skin, and just notice that pressure. And just allow yourself just to breathe completely naturally for you. And focus inward on the sensation. And you can just begin to slow down that kind of massaging point or pressure, but staying connected to the sensation. And without trying to sort of force anything with the breath. Just let the breath go at your natural rate. And then you should just begin to notice what's happening in your body. So just notice what's happening in your belly, what you're aware of. But that can really, again, just help sort of drop us down. And the other one is nice and quick, is just called the butterfly strokes. And that's just where you brush down from the tops of the shoulders down to the elbows. And you can just do that repeatedly. And again, that just sends signals into the nervous system that it's safe and it can relax. And a lot of this stuff, actually, if you think about it, it really makes sense, doesn't it? Because you would be held as a child, you'd be comforted. There's certain tapping points that kind of stimulate that, and all of this is kind of designed to let the nervous system know that you're safe. What you fear, that awful thing you fear of happening, isn't going to happen.
It's so lovely. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, I'm very excited about asking you about dream stuff. I think this is fascinating. We all know how we're guided by our subconscious, and some of those patterns can not be very helpful, but there's gold when we pay attention to intuitive impulses. And I feel like it's a shame that as children, actually, we shut down our intuition and we don't trust it as we should, because it really is a guidepost towards where we will find much fulfillment. So you are, I believe you're not only immersed in the world of dreams, you're actually teaching. You are working at the Dream Institute with dreams.
So yeah, I have been doing some teaching around dreams, and I work with clients using various sort of dream techniques. And yes, and I'm going to be doing also some workshops on that as well.
Phenomenal. And so what's the magic? What's the magic we should all know about? What? Because I have a dream journal by my bed, so I will, half asleep, I will write down what's in there. Why do I do that? What's the point of that?
Well, I mean, so our dreams are our own kind of personal. I kind of look at it as it's your connection to your subconscious, or to your your soul, to yourself, however you want to look at that, your higher self. And if you don't have that kind of view or that sort of spiritual take on it, then certainly you could look at it through the lens of the unconscious mind. And that information is being kind of given to you for a reason. That's it's usually what's within the subconscious is usually something that we can't be conscious of for some reason, so therefore it's kind of been sort of split off and tucked away. And so when it's coming up through dreams, it's doing so because it has a purpose. It wants you to kind of reconnect and remember, because these parts that are sort of split off, if you like, we've split them off for reasons. Usually it's something traumatic or painful or difficult, something that we couldn't process or be with at the time. But when we split it off, not only did it contain what was challenging or difficult, or what perhaps we didn't like about ourselves or something, but it's also containing the complete counterpart. So there's so many gifts, and there's medicine in these dreams. So when we learn the sort of language of our own dreams and how to interact with them and what they're trying to communicate to us, then we can just really help our sense of personal development, personal growth, psycho-spiritual development. That's all made possible. Healing, it's all made possible through the connection, because those dreams, if you like, hold packets of energy and information. So a little bit like, I don't know, if you had on a phone, if you suddenly you have access to these apps, you've got access to this different information, or the upgrades that you take down that you download into the phone makes the phone work faster, and if you don't debug it, then it's going to work slower. So dreams are kind of can give us our upgrades, if you like, if we access them, if we know how to do that.
I love that analogy. You just described there, you referred to it as being unique to each and every one of us. So we're going to have different ways of interpreting our dreams or responding to dreams.
Well, there are commonalities and there are common themes. But it's really important to treat everybody individually when you're working with your dreams, because your association over one thing, you know, if I said apple, what do you associate with that? You might associate one thing, I might associate something else. And because symbols and imagery is the language of dreams, what they're tied to is specific to you and specific to me, but there are collective themes. So for example, in the subject of burnout, how that might show up in a dream might be, for example, you're struggling to keep control of your car. So suddenly, you know, you can't park, the brakes aren't working, you know, the doors are falling off, something like that. Or it might be that you're in a house and you can't lock your windows, or you can't lock your doors, things are being left open. So
it's unique interpretation based on your own symbolisms.
Well, that in those particular areas, that's where it might be kind of more relevant to the whole. So for example, cars often tend to symbolize how we maneuver through life, how we're getting through. It's our vehicle, our mode of transportation. So what's happening with your car and the state of the car is actually telling you a lot about what's happening in your kind of state of mind and where you're at. The house, you know, again, that's like sort of home of the psyche, if you like. So whatever's happening in the home will generally give us clues and indicators. So it's a way of kind of getting a reflection of maybe, because for some people, if you're not really in contact with your own feeling yet, you know, that's not sort of, say, necessarily highly developed yet, connected with, you might be a brilliant thinker, but you don't necessarily know what you're always feeling, then the dreams will help connect you with that. But the most important aspect of the dream isn't actually understanding the sort of analyticals of it, you know, what does it mean? The most important part is actually connecting with the energy that's held within the dream, because that's what facilitates the healing and the transformation, you know. And I'm really interested in your technique that you have, which is Energyscape, your Energyscape method. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit more about how you use that and how that works.
Well, there are definite similarities where it's very individual, and when we are working with our own energy rhythms, we have to remember that we are bio-individual. So each and every one of us is going to be responding to external stimulus in different ways, whether it's physical, whether it's geographical, whether it's mental. So we're going to have all sorts of different programs that create a sense of risk tolerance and comfort. And you might thrive in the city, I might thrive in the country, you might be able to have an espresso before going to sleep, I might just buzz. So we're all very individual in terms of our own unique makeup, our bio-individuality. So if we are learning to harness our energy, because ultimately we want more of it, which is what everybody's desperate for, we need to start to come back into what I teach is the harmonic energy state. And it's not rocket science. It's just becoming aware of when we are stressing our energetic system too far out of balance. Because let's remember, our beautiful bodies are designed homeostatically to always be in balance and to always be producing the energy that we need to sustain in life. But what's gone wrong in modern life today is where we have just normalized this push and hurting ourselves and not paying attention to those rhythms. So when we start to feel the desire and the need to rest, too often we ignore it. We have another coffee, or we have an energy drink, or we pump ourselves up even with exercise, because we seek a desperate source of adrenaline rather than understanding and respecting the delicate balance between stress and rest, because we're each going to have a very individual flow. and a different relationship with stress and different things, different stress tolerances. So what I might enjoy going out on stage and talking to everybody and even want to have a tap dance, to somebody else that might be incredibly intimidating and incredibly stressful. So it's about recognizing when you're pushing yourself too far into constant stress and knowing how to course correct. And a great example I always talk about, Roger Bannister, before he broke the 4-minute mile record, he wasn't pounding the track, working his body to the nth degree. He was having a 2-week hiking holiday with his friends in the Scottish Highlands, relaxing, chilling. He'd already done the work. He recognized that for him to be in peak performance, he needed to incorporate rest into his life. And that's where we're out of kilter and we're robbing Peter to pay Paul each time we're tired, but we have a coffee and we push on and we push on. So in the Energyscape method, it's about learning to reconnect with our natural energetic rhythms and pay attention to what energizes us and makes us feel great, like the joy and the purpose, because there's an endless pool of energy that we can tap into. There is a source, and we just need to understand our own individual relationship with energy and bring ourselves back into a natural, sustainable rhythm, because there's magic there. There really is. And that might involve cleansing things in our lives that drain us, whether it's habits or people or a career. Because if we are in a compromised, contorted state where we're showing up every day in a stress state, not being ourselves, not authentically flowing, when we are contorted, life is exhausting and it is going to be unsustainable. So the quicker we can get into integrity, into flow, and work with our rhythms, break when we need to, and rejuvenate. I mean, I interviewed women for my book on relaxation, and I cannot tell you how many people actually laughed and said, you should relax, I don't know how to do that. Or I got this sort of responses that were very performative, like, oh yes, I relax while I'm listening to my podcast, ironing the sheets while tea's in the oven. You know, that kind of nonsense relaxation that isn't so we need to learn how to relax.
And the value of it, I think, you know, to really value it and its importance.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I think we've absolutely talked for so long that we've probably really eaten into Q&A time. But before we stop, I would love to say, has anybody got any questions for Melinda and I whilst we're here? And how long have we got, Carl? Before 15 minutes. Okay. So yeah. Oh, there we go. Eager. Hello.
Hi. Oh, me.
Yes.
Hi. So firstly, thank you. That was a gorgeous conversation. And Bianca, again, massive congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
I suppose what I'm really interested about is, it feels like there's been a kind of hard, this comes from a personal perspective, if I'm being really selfish, but a sort of hard fought extraction from the core corporate world and a move into, you're both in a really sort of fulfilled space where it feels like there's a lot of balance. But how do you moderate that balance against ambition? Because Bianca and I, for a start, you know, you've by no means obviously look around, have by no means, as you say, kind of clipped your dreams, I suppose. Mm-hmm. So how do you continue to say, I can expand upon my ambition, but without sacrificing the stability that you both seem to have managed to achieve so well?
Well, it comes down to attention. Great question, thank you. But it all comes down to attention. And this misdirection of attention is impacting energy and time. That's the second complaint of people in my clinic. Don't have enough energy, don't have enough time. And it comes down to how we are working with our own attention and focus. Because if we have objective attention, it means it's potentially being stolen by people, notifications, media, consumption that's accidental. When it is subjective, and we architect how we manage our lives and ourselves in such a way where we focus on what matters most and allow ourselves to get into states of flow as often as we can without interruption, then life naturally expands because we've got more energy and more capability. But we have to be ruthless in actually designing that and working out where we want to focus our attention. But once we do this, we're limitless. And the studies that have shown, if you multitask, it's foolish. Your IQ drops by 10 points. So that's proven. Don't multitask. But when you get into focus, if you can encourage, and each day, if you can be 15 to 20% more in focus and flow, so without interruption, you can double your productivity according to the latest McKinsey study. So just by allowing yourself the gift of staying in focused flow and just paying attention to one particular thing, you double your productivity. So I've learned and really learned the hard way, because believe you me, I used to be a little Miss Frenetic, hop around and do everything. But you know, now I'm really razor focused with my attention. So would you add to any of that?
I would completely agree with that, and perhaps maybe sort of add, as you know, that this is about kind of really sort of noticing what's happening in the self. So attention is the key. But it, you know, if you have the ambition to sort of grow and want to do more, absolutely that's all entirely possible, as long as you're sort of keeping the focus on self and keeping yourself in the center, you know. And I kind of like to talk about it with clients, particularly clients who are the sort of people pleasers, want to do everything for everyone, and it's a real struggle for them to focus on themselves, to sort of imagine themselves as a dot in the center of a circle and make no decision without referring to you first. So in other words, is this okay for me? You know, if I say, do I want to say yes to this? You know, is that all right for me? Do I want to say no to that? Is that all? So I might change an appointment. Is that good for me? Is this what I want? So continuously keeping yourself in the center of your life. And if you do that, then you're operating from a really different place, and you will find then that there's a flow to that and there's an alignment.
Yeah, it all comes down to that alignment and integrity. Actually, the last strategy in the book is about stepping into integrity.
Both, thank you for really just a nice feeling of I'm not alone.
Oh.
I'm sure a lot of people feel the same, so thank you.
Bless you.
You talk a lot about self in this, and I've just stepped out of the corporate world, and I'm going to be going through a lot of work and have been going through a lot of work, much like yourselves. But another thing I'm looking at is how do we help the generations of the future? So my son, who's 6, he is going to be led, if we're not careful, by people who don't have this awareness. And quite frankly, the blueprint for what the world should look like in the coming years doesn't exist, and will be written by people like us who help influence it. So my question within that is, what do you see being some of the pivotal shifts we need to do to help the future generations?
Yeah.
Sorry, big one.
It's a
Yeah,
lovely, good
it's
question.
really big, but probably the most important question you can ask, isn't it? You know, what do we do? And I think that really awareness and consciousness is the key here, and that's what will enable things to shift and change. And I think if you know, in an ideal world, we would see things like meditation and mindfulness and self-awareness kind of being taught in schools, because you know, as we've been talking, this is the kind of the key, really. I think perhaps and also your point about attention and focus, I think if we can really educate the next generation on the importance of that, because you know that's fundamental. It's a bit like that kind of, you know, projector screen, wherever they focus it, that's what they're going to create. So if they can learn the place to focus that and how to, and the importance of it, then likewise they're going to create something quite different. So the coming back to the quality of attention and focus, which is obviously really dissipated, and you know, we've got our technology is really distracting. So I think there will be some, I mean, I'd like to see sort of shifts in the way that we educate children. But I'm a fan of the sort of Steiner Waldorf, those kind of approaches, which are very much sort of head, heart and hands, engaging that and teaching children how to question. And that also helps the child sort of develop in a different way. But
Yeah, I agree. It's all education. It's all education, and we just have to champion it, raise awareness, and just be the Jamie Olivers, don't we? Disrupting how education is today, and this is what I'm trying to do in organisations. And it's interesting which organisations like, yes, please come in and help us. We really are worried. Everyone's burning out. Help us. And the fact that I'm coming in and saying, okay, well, let's just teach people about attention and time and energy management, because nobody's ever learnt it. But it's breaking down the barrier of blame and finger pointing, and there's a sense of shame around burnout, and we've just got to surface it.
Yeah, and I think going along with that, learning how to regulate, you know, if people learn how to do that, I mean, we would sort so many things out. If we understood the kind of importance of self-regulation, what that looks like, and how practically we can do that, that would make fundamentally huge changes. And slowing things down, you know, that it's really okay just to slow the pace of life down. In fact, my personal opinion would be it's essential, and I don't know whether you would agree, but I don't feel that limits you and your capabilities of what you can achieve. If anything,
no, exactly,
perhaps to really refine that focus.
Yeah, well, it's the success with grace. Actually, you brought us beautifully to the crescendo end. You know, the whole point of this discussion is how can we get to this place of success with grace? So being gentle with ourselves, but still achieving, because there is so much energy and joy in succeeding. And let's not forget that actually tribally, if we go right back to prehistoric times, if you didn't prove your impact, you would be ostracized from the tribe. So it's okay to be ambitious and to want to have impact. You know, that's who we are. That's a primitive desire. So absolutely pursue that, but not at a frenetic pace or at the expense of compromising how to self-sustain beautifully. So I think we are sadly out of time, and I could chat to you forever. I want to thank everybody for your rapt attention, the nodding heads, the smiles, and we're going to be milling around for a little bit now. Please grab yourselves another drink or a tarot reading, and thank you.
Congratulations to you.